Hi there, this is Zach with Fine Skills. It's a quick video for everyone and a walkthrough of our expense request section and features. This video specifically covers the use of this section in a time and billing workflow or a billing project template. So this probably looks familiar if you've used our products before. This looks like the billable expense section or the check request section. It's a collection section in Filevine. The idea here is this allows your Filevine users to initiate some accounting transactions. They can initiate either a check, a credit card, or bill, each of which can push to QuickBooks or not to push QuickBooks, or they can also become a billable item in your next invoicing cycle or not. So here's kind of how this works. So we'll go ahead and start by clicking Add an Item, the big green button, and then this first drop down called Expense Type. You'll notice we have the option to push a check, a credit card, or a bill. We'll walk through each of these, starting with the check. So we'll say this check's for $100. Our amounts required, our vendors required, expense description. This becomes simply your line item description in QuickBooks. If you push this to an invoice, this is also the description of the line item on a Filevine invoice. If you push this check into QuickBooks, you also want a check memo. This is the memo that actually prints on a physical check out of QuickBooks. And one of my favorite features is we can attach a supporting document as well. Right now in my example, this is not marked as required, as indicated by the red asterisk. If you want this required, just let us know. This can be required in your workflow. That way your users would not be able to push any transaction to QuickBooks without support. So that's kind of a nice option too. Okay, so I filled out the required fields here. In my next step, there's a note section here. It's described as internal notes, not pushed to QuickBooks. So this is just lives in Filevine if you need to reference anything at a later date. And then these two questions are important. So the first one is, do we want to create a billing item? Again, this will create an actual item, an unbilled billable item in your billing section that can easily be captured in your next invoice cycle. So we'll go ahead and click yes on that. And then the second question is, do we create a transaction in QuickBooks? Yes, we do. So I think typically when you're up and running on this section on a go-forward basis, you're going to always be creating these in transaction. This is where this workflow for this transaction is going to start. The main reason we have this option is if you're migrating data into this section from a legacy system, you can migrate data in, simply select no, and then you're not going to duplicate all these old accounting transactions into QuickBooks. So we leave that as an option for you. The payment status section here, nothing to update here. Our integration is going to automatically fill in this section ad hoc. So we'll go ahead and click create at this point. And two things will have happened seamlessly. The first is we're going to create a billing item in your billing section. So let's navigate there first. Navigate to my default Filevine billing section here. I'm going to click on billing entries and expenses, and you'll notice right here, August 6th, description, expense description for $100. This was the check that we just drafted in the expense request section, and you'll notice it's teed up with a save status right here as a Filevine billing item. That way, next time you draft an invoice, for example, at the project level here, and I go to expenses, I can simply check this box and include this expense on my next invoice. Alrighty, so the other thing that happens is this check also got drafted in QuickBooks, so let's take a look there. In QuickBooks, I'm just going to navigate to my expenses section to find and show you this check real quick. Here it is, 8/6. We'll take a look here. We're defaulting to whatever operating bank account you want to. Most importantly, we're defaulting this check and all transactions we create in QuickBooks from this section to your case cost account, and we're also taking your Filevine project as the client or customer on that transaction. What that does, as a reminder, is that maintains your ability to report cost sheets out of QuickBooks. It also tells the integration which transactions do we need to bring into your settlement section in Filevine. So notice we're always having those fields defaulted. Let's see what else. As promised, your supporting document pushes over nicely here. And on checks, we're always going to check print later on our checks. That way these checks show up in your print queue. So if your accounting team had like a A lot of my clients, the accounting teams have like a monthly pay run cycle. Everyone knows accounting runs checks on Tuesdays, for example. This will just be in your queue until Tuesday. On Tuesday, the accountants log in, they review every check in the queue. They click onto the underlying support here. They make sure the dollar amount's right, you're paying the right person, everything looks right before they print the check and send money at the door. So print later, that simply puts it in the print queue. If that's not your workflow and you're not printing checks out of QuickBooks, no problem. You uncheck that and you can put your own reference number. Even if you sent a wire, ACH, you can manually type in your own reference number. Most accounting teams are familiar with that. Let's navigate back to Filevine and demonstrate the other transaction types. Oops, right here. I'm going to go back to my expense request section. And I want to simply demonstrate the slight differences. So if we're selecting a credit card transaction, the assumption here is the Filevine user who's completing this section holds a company card. They use the company card for something, and they just want to record what they did. So they're going to select credit card. The dollar amount, we'll use $101. We'll keep paying the county courthouse because I've got a lack of creativity here today. You'll notice the date is required for credit card. Transaction date's important, so we'll put in the date of the swipe, August 6th, and then again, we do have an expense description to fill out. As always, we can attach supporting documentation to this transaction right there. Internal notes, don't push to QuickBooks, same kind of thing. Do we want to create a billable item? Yeah, sure. Let's go ahead and create the billable item. And let's go ahead and create the transaction in QuickBooks. So we'll go ahead and click create here. Double check two things happened here. We'll check our billing entries. Give this a refresh. And we see here is that $101 credit card charge teed up nicely for your next invoice. We'll also navigate into QuickBooks here. Take a look at how this transaction shows up. So again, I'm going to navigate to expenses, refresh QuickBooks. Boom, there's our $101 expense transaction. So you'll notice in QuickBooks, we create an expense type transaction. We're mapping to whatever credit card is your default preference. Similar to checks, we're always taking that case cost account. We're always taking that Filevine project that transaction came from. Support pushes over in the exact same way. What's really nice for the accounting team on credit cards is if your accounting team is using the live bank feed, I don't have a real one to demonstrate in this video here because this is a fake QuickBooks account, but if you were to navigate to your banking section in QuickBooks, you might have a live bank feed of that credit card. Those real credit card charges will sync into QuickBooks as they clear, and QuickBooks will prompt to match to existing expense transactions in QuickBooks. So the nice thing for the bookkeepers is these expense transactions are coming in from Filevine. They're already coded to case costs. They're already coded to the project, therefore. And so that bookkeeper account does not need to have as much back and forth with the card holders of, hey, what was this charge for? Was it for a case cost? Which client was it for? And that kind of thing. So that can be really helpful in your workflow. We'll navigate back to expense requests and just quickly demonstrate the third option, which is a bill. So I'll go to bill here. Again, we've got very similar fields. I'll do $102. We'll do county courthouse again, of course. The date of the bill is required, and the due date is also required. We made that required so the accounting team will be prompted like, hey, this is an overdue bill or this is coming due in the QuickBooks, accounts payable native tools. If we didn't make that required, folks could push bills into QuickBooks and the accounting team might not be aware that they're there and might not have eyes on it to make sure they pay it in time. General just pitch for the bill transaction. Usually larger firms, this is more useful. A couple benefits to a bill. One, you're not paying it immediately and you've not already paid it. And so your accounting and finance team can take the time to pass that invoice, that bill through the proper approval workflows. So this gets created in QuickBooks, but the integration does not pay it or anything like that. This would follow your existing finance workflow for payment. Some benefits of that are, one, you can go through a structured approval process, which many larger firms will have, and two, it's a cash flow tool. You don't have to pay this immediately. You only have to pay it when it's due, and so you can kind of manage your own cash flow on the accounts payable side nicely with bills. Again, we're going to have an expense description. Again, we can attach a copy of that invoice. Again, we'll create a billing item and we'll push this to QuickBooks. Go ahead and click create. We'll double check our billing item here. Sure enough, $102, there's our item ready to get collected on the next invoice. And then going back into QuickBooks to the expenses section, I can see expense type bill is created here. Vendors there, of course, it came from this bill amount immediately increments the case cost balance in both Filevine and in QuickBooks. The due date pushes over. You'll notice we did not put an invoice number in. We wanted to limit the data entry of the Filevine user. I guess we wanted, this will be reviewed by the accounting team. We want them to invoice, to review it, add the terms, make sure the due date's right, add the invoice number. We do push over a copy of the invoice here, so it's all ready to go. That is a bill transaction. So one more thing, if we go back into Filevine, and I'll go back to my check, for example. At the bottom of this section, you'll notice we have a payment status. You notice this check, the status was marked as created. That's just indicating, okay, this transaction was created in QuickBooks. We can be confident it's there. If this check gets printed, the integration will automatically push back the printed status. We'll give you the date of the check. We'll give you the check number. If it's voided in QuickBooks, we'll push back voided. So for credit card transactions and bills, obviously there's no printed, but we do push back created and voided for those as well. So that can be useful for the legal team. Kind of limit some of that back and forth between the legal team and the accounting team. So hopefully that was helpful. That's kind of a full rundown of the expense request tool for the time and billing folks. Thank you.